Hello, my friends. Welcome to Let's Talk, produced by Wise Mindly Inc. I'm your host, Coach Che Marville. In this space, we dive into transformative conversations that hopefully inspire you to grow, heal, and have a deeper connection to yourself and to the world around you. So, let's talk, let's connect, let's grow together. My friends, I'm so glad you're here with me in this space. Let's Talk is moving into season 4, and it feels so different from the way we started. We started in the midst of a pandemic. I started with a very different aspiration. In fact, I was really just processing loss and wanting to connect to people I knew, people who inspired me, people I didn't know. I felt, and I don't know if you felt this, so alienated during the first year of the pandemic. We couldn't network, we couldn't meet each other, and I found podcasting was a way to connect to old friends, celebrate those who are doing really well, and more importantly, just build relationships. The thing that I didn't imagine was that Let's Talk would become this reservoir of connection that would grow into so many more things. Strong relationships, partnerships, collaborations, business opportunities, and personal relationships in a time when the world feels, although bigger, smaller because of all the weird toxic things going on. I kind of talk about the 5 Gs, and let's see if I can remember them. Sometimes they're 5, sometimes they're 6. But the 5 toxic Gs are, it's ghosting, gaslighting, gaming, and I don't mean video games, grotesqueness, so really gross things being celebrated, and the sort of seed of so many negative things, greed. And we are inundated with what I call the 5 Gs. They have impacted so many of us. They're baked into algorithms. And all I'm saying is that we have to recognize that they're there and stand up to it. But I digress a lot. And if you know me, you know I have a tendency to do that. I'm going to actually do a whole episode. They're called the 5G vices because they're so incredibly impactful. As those of you who have been with me since the beginning know, when I started Let's Talk, it wasn't just the beginning of the pandemic and all the wildness that happened. I was experiencing a very significant loss. My soulful, spiritual mother had passed away suddenly, shockingly, like it was as though the wind took her, but it wasn't the wind. It was COVID. This woman who was, through the beginning of the pandemic, making food for us, and we're making food for her, and she was living in her co-op downtown in Toronto, helping people. Like that was her mantra. That was her love, her value system. When she said she was a Christian, it was all about, for her, love. And we were talking every day. My mom and I were close before the pandemic, so it was really hard not being able to see her, but our focus was, we've got to keep her safe because she's in her 80s. And, while we're trying to keep the kids safe and each other safe, we have to put her in a bubble. She did not like that. She was not good with it. I did lose my mom, and that began a deep, soulful journey. Grief is so much more than we even talk about. I think we don't even talk about grief enough. Grief has its own house and it has hidden rooms, and it takes years if you loved someone and if they loved you back. It takes years to unpack and process and remember and forget. It was and it is, because I think I'm still in it, although it's far different now than it was when we lost her immediately. My mom wasn't just my maternal guide. She was a really interesting friend. She and I were friends. We were sisters. We could argue and disagree and laugh and share tea. And even though she was in her 80s, her mind was like that of a person in their 30s. Her mind was sharp. But she was also my spiritual mentor. And I say that not because she practiced a form of perfection in her spirituality and her faith, but because she practiced the imperfection and talked about it. And she shared the trials of belief, of faithing, of experiencing loss and disappointment, the way you can be challenged to believe in something greater than yourself when you are experiencing hard things. But as she got older, as she lived longer, her energy for her faith, her compassion, her empathy, her desire to interact with you on the subject of faith only increased. And at the very same time, she was not dogmatic. She was not judgmental. She was open. And you know, one of the things that, and just to go on about my mom for a moment, and I think her life deserves many moments of recognition. But I remember being 11 and 12, you know, I'm Gen Xer. And so many of us spent time alone. And I remember, you know, I'd go home after school. I have my key that's around my neck and open the door and wait for my mom. My mom was a nurse and she was working a day shift. But usually she got home between 6 and 7. And I remember there were multiple times when my mother would call me on the landline and say, I want you to come to work. I want you to come and meet me at work at Toronto Western because I don't know when I'm going to get home. It's going to be way past 7 o'clock. And I remember once there was a young woman whose family had abandoned her after she had an abortion. And my mother stayed with her until they could get her into another place, into another home. And my mom did that a lot. She routinely went out of her way to be a source of support or advocacy for a person who was vulnerable. So it wasn't that she talked about it. You know, it was before social media, so she didn't have to, you know, promote it. It was just something she did. And when we talked about, like, why do you feel so compelled or convicted to do that? It was always about faith. It was about God lives in us and godliness being about our actions towards one another. So, of course, having someone like that who evolved over many decades, having that kind of conversation, seeing the actual act beyond the words. She was a powerful teacher even when I didn't think she was my teacher. For so many years, I didn't know my mom was my teacher. It wasn't until I got older and I started to engage in the world differently that I started to understand that our relationship was beyond mother and daughter. And for that, I am supremely grateful. And I know that the way she loved my siblings and my nieces and nephews was in the same way. She, I think for all of us in different ways, was a spiritual guide. And losing her at the beginning, or not, at the height of the pandemic, was a trigger. It was transformational. It's very common for people to lose their parents in midlife, but nothing can prepare you for it, right? Nothing can prepare you for this kind of loss, because there's a lot of loss in midlife. That's why so many people go into a crisis. It's because midlife is kind of this crescendo, this kind of culmination of the world you used to know, the world you were born into, the people you were born to, and the world becoming something new, especially in 2020. Right now, the change that we're experiencing, the futurists are saying we are going to experience more change in the next 5 years than we have in the last 100 years. And it's hard to even comprehend what that means, because the last 4 years have been pretty traumatic, dramatic, and transformational. But my point to you is that for many, many people, midlife is a crisis. But I think a crisis is also a catalyst. I would much rather have my mother here with me today. However, losing her has been a catalyst to learning to tell the truth, to learning to face who I truly am, to not having any more excuses, to not having a soft foundation. And in the midst of the pandemic and grief and changing careers or evolving careers, guess what showed up? She showed up before. And now I'm talking to some of my female friends out there who are in midlife. Perimenopause showed up. Oh, yeah. And I think she started in 2019, and I like to refer to her as a her, like she was a person, because she actually came into my life and just turned everything upside down. And again, nobody gives you a book on midlife. Nobody gives you a book on perimenopause, which really is all of the hormonal changes that start to lead up to menopause. And perimenopause can be anywhere from 3 to 10 years. Also, some people, I know there's some of you out there going, I never had it. Like, I have a really good friend who's like, I never had perimenopause. It never happened to me. I don't know what everyone's talking about. And I love to say to her, good for you. But for many of us, we experienced or experiencing really, really transformational changes. And they're neurological changes. They're biological. They're physiological. They're musculoskeletal. They upend your whole life. It changes your sleep. It changes the way you process thoughts, the way you digest food. And what I discovered was that along with grief, along with changes in the economy and the world around you and raising teenagers, that I was experiencing something that I didn't have full control over. And that also was a catalyst to becoming a new person. No one tells you, like really, like literally, you could go to the doctor and the doctors will say, well, and it'll be male or female doctors who will say, well, this is just what it is to be a woman. I actually had one doctor say to me, it sucks to be a woman. And she was a woman. I told her that that wasn't a good narrative and that she should never share that again with anyone. But what I discovered was that our symptoms are not the thing that you need to treat, but the symptoms are the story of your biography. As Candace Pert, the scientist, used to say, that your biology is born out of your biography. And midlife, actually, perimenopause in particular, I think, is a confrontation with who you used to be, who you are, and whether or not you can decide to become an intentional human being, an intentional woman. And we focus so much on the symptoms. And by the way, for those of you who are not aware, sometimes these symptoms start in your mid to late 30s, and there's about 100 of them. For me, it was not hot flashes. I never got hot flashes. I got itchy ears and itchy back and feelings of anxiousness. And I, who make my entire living from talking, for the first time in my life, I started to get palpitations when I would give a big talk or a big speech or a keynote or something. Never had it happen before. And one of the reasons I knew that I was starting to go through the change was that I remember my mother having the same itchiness in her back. And sometimes it would be ferocious. And she'd say, come itch my back, come itch my back. And I would say, like, Mom, what is going on? And she'd say, like, this is midlife, Shay. This is midlife. So whether or not those are actual hormonal changes that I was experiencing or that was something I inherited from my mom, that's how I knew that I was starting. And, there's also this interesting thing that happens in midlife. We can get very isolated because nobody wants to talk about midlife. Like, this whole society is kind of like, we're very contrary about this, and we're obsessed with being young, but we're also obsessed with living for a long time. But basically, we want people to live for a long time and still be young. It doesn't make any sense. And I think it's so destructive to women. And I can only speak as a woman. I can't speak about what men are experiencing. Imagine that they experience similar things, but I'm talking about being a woman right now. I'm talking about having hormones that are changing inside of you because you're this incredible chemical factory. I gained 30 pounds between 2019 and 2023. And 2022, in 2023, I was trying to lose the weight and actually ended up gaining more weight because I was doing all the things that I would do in the past to lose weight. I was exercising excessively. I was trying to control how much food I was taking in. And it didn't work because I have a different system now. We all have a different hormonal system now. Oh my God. And when I understood that, when I started to really study the science and myself, I came up with a new plan. I knew, one, I had to create a new pattern. I knew that excessive exercise actually was not good for me. It wasn't good for the cortisol, that hormone, that stress hormone that makes you feel like you're always on, like you're always on fire, like you're always in a state of anxiety. That wasn't good. I started to weight lift. That was a game changer. And hello, this idea that if you lift weights, you become bulky, not true. But when you do lift weights consistently, it changes the composition of your body. But most importantly, I had a trainer who said something really incredibly powerful. He said, his name is Bruno, and he said that, what are the biggest muscles in your body? And I'm like, my thighs. And he's like, do you love your thighs? And I said, I don't love them. I'm okay with them, but they're just getting bigger and bigger. And he says, you have to love your thighs because this muscle has protein that will feed your brain and feed your body. And so if you think about it, if you build more muscle, you are going to start to build your brain and retrain your body to be strong. So for those of us in midlife who are losing bone density, who are losing muscle mass, we're focusing on dieting when we should actually be focusing on training. So that's my soapbox on that. Okay, I'm sorry, but I just had to tell you because I gained 30 pounds between 2019 and 2023, and I lost all of that weight. And no, I am not thin, but am I strong? Yes, I am. Am I getting stronger? Yes, I am. Has it made a transformational difference in how I experience perimenopause, how I sleep, how I digest? Yes. And I still do cardio, but I do it in like sprints. There's a track, a high school around the corner, and I go and I run and I do a few sprints. Those things have helped me. Increasing protein, resting because I'm also, doing work to tire myself out during the day. So having a great sleep, increasing fiber. These were the things that changed. And these were the things that allowed me to lose 30 pounds. It was not dieting and using pills and doing other things. And, of course, we're all different. But what I learned in the first few years of perimenopause about how to change my body and how that impacted my mind has been a catalyst for creating a new world for myself, a new life for myself. And even though there were so many things that were life altering between 2019 and 2022, I now feel like I have, and this is why I'm sharing it with you, because I now feel like I have this new toolbox of behavior and pattern change. And did I mention that I also had a couple surgeries in that time? Did I mention I ended up discovering, shortly after my mom passed, I discovered that I had a growth on one of my kidneys and I had to have it removed. I discovered that I had these fibroids that were out of control and I had to have them removed. And there are all these things that happen that you didn't know could happen and you never imagined for yourself. And the question is, does your body have the capability and the capacity and the muscle strength and the brain strength to face it? And so I want this season of Let's Talk to not be about toxic positivity or I'm telling you to be strong when you're not, telling you to be strong when you don't even know how to find it. No, I want to talk about the patterns that we have to build to create new habits for strength. I want to encourage you to understand that the person you were, or the person you were before the pandemic, or the person you were before 40 or before 50, that person is a part of your story, but that person isn't who you need right now to create a new life. And you can create a new life. You can design a new life. But it's not simple. It doesn't happen in 30 days. And it's not about perfection. It's about growth and really recognizing how extraordinary your life force is. It is about understanding what is meaningful to you. And when you understand what meaning is for you, and then you think about what are you good at, what are you natural at, what's organic in you, that's where you find purpose. It was the psychotherapist Carl Jung that said, you can't know anything about yourself until after 40. And I know we're freaked out by that because we're like, you read the statistics, the actuaries and, people running around saying, oh, you only live till 78 or 83. My friends, chuck all of that. We know what helps us to live longer. Even when we are facing a health event, our well-being is key. Sleep, resting, mindfulness, activation of our bones and muscles, neuroplasticity, new ideas, trying new things out, using your left hand when you're right-handed, making new friends, talking about diverse and different things, eating whole foods, filling your life with joy and activity and movement. Those are the things that increase the opportunity for us to be well. And wellness is the thing that creates the opportunity for longevity. So many of us are isolated. I mentioned it before. You get to midlife and you don't have any friends anymore. And it's not because you've had a big fight with anyone. It's because everyone is so busy. Everyone is so preoccupied. Everyone is just trying to survive. And we miss the point that part of our emotional survival is about our relationship to one another. When we are lonely, our chances of illness, of chronic disease, of not having an intact immune system are greater. It's unbelievable. But we are social animals. We are meant to be integrated. We are village people. We are meant to look after each other. And, one of my kids, she always complains about, there's way too many podcasters out there. You know what I think podcasting is? I think podcasting is about looking after the village because we can't all be together. I think we've got to do whatever we can to build strong relationships, to create new relationships, and to nurture those relationships. And here's the thing. If you survived the last 4 years, then you are resilient. Then you are somebody who is meant to create and build and make something in this moment. I am not suggesting that the people that didn't survive were not strong enough. No. Again, as I said to you, I would like to have my mom here. But those of us who have survived the most horrible, horrible grief, obstacles we never imagined, this is no time to give up. This is a time to rebuild, to remake, to redefine, to reimagine. And dare I say the word, to be hopeful, because we exist. And I want to talk about it in Let's Talk. I want to talk to people who have survived and succeeded or who are trying. I want to talk to people who have imperfect lives like myself. I want to talk to people who are doing research and looking at what happens in midlife to women and to men. And I want us to talk about how to build each other up so that we can honor the life force that has been seeded in us, baked into us, that no one ever gave us a manual for. And yet, we've got this extraordinary mind, this beautiful mind that is capable of all sorts of things, and this remarkable body that keeps surviving. So let's, together, through talking, loving, and nourishing our friendships, let's create meaning and purpose together. And if you are in, subscribe, follow, share, write a review. I am so happy to be back. Let's talk. Let's talk, let's talk, let's talk. Talk to you at the next show. It's going to be the CEO of Pause, Natalie Perkins, is coming into town, and she's going to be on the podcast. Ciao for now, my friends. My friends, thank you for joining me on Let's Talk, produced by Wise Mindly Inc. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take action, reflect, or embrace on a new way of thinking, on a new path. And if you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you did, don't forget to subscribe, share, and even leave a review. Reviews matter. They allow us to do way more than we're doing now. Let's continue the journey of growth and well-being together. Until next time, I'm Coach Che Marville. Stay connected, stay curious, and let's keep talking.